This is a podcast sponsored by Twin Lightning Research. I'm Amanda Siqueira. Today, Sara and I will talk about the business behind clinical research.
It's my pleasure, Amanda.
You know, Sara, this is an important discussion in the context of public health science. The academic research industry highly contributes to the scientific community and society in general. Research industry differs from academia by some features regarding the intellectual property, the rights related to the data and publication, payment, and period to carry out the trial. Thus, contracts are crucial for the research process and also to avoid legal actions due to the potential source of conflicts.
Exactly, Amanda. The International Conference on Harmonization Good Clinical Practice guideline stated that signing agreement between involved parties is among essential documents for clinical trials. In this sense, the Clinical Trial Agreement, also known as CTA, is a legally binding agreement that delineates the obligation and responsibility of each part that is involved in conducting a clinical trial. For example, the sponsor, research site, and research site team, clinical research organization. Overall, the CTA should clarify all applicable terms and conditions for a clinical trial, such as study protocol, budget and payment information, publication rights, confidentiality, indemnification, subject injury, intellectual property, study data, insurance coverage, restriction or not to conduct research, termination, liability, debarment, accreditation of human research protection programs, and disputes. Today, we are going to discuss the hot mentioned points: intellectual property, data and publication rights, payment, and period to perform the trial.
Wonderful, Sarah. That's it. Let's start with intellectual properties. The discovery of new treatments and the development of medicines to fulfill health issues demands safeguard for new ideas. So, the motivation for scientific health progress accounts for intellectual properties protection once industry can regain the invested funds to still fund new studies.
Indeed, Amanda, on one hand, the industry wants to protect its intellectual properties regarding the new intervention or medicine. On the other hand, the academia may claim some new intellectual properties originated during the research.
Exactly, Sarah. One way CTA often uses to solve this issue is to acknowledge separate properties of sponsor and academia. Thus, the original inventions technologies such as study drugs devices are recognized as a sponsor property. Besides, it is the academia obligation to declare as sponsor property any new intervention or discoveries developed from results obtained by the ongoing study or from material provided by the sponsor. Nevertheless, innovations discovered from the academia that are not derived from sponsors' unique properties can be recognized as academia property. But Sarah, how about if the sponsor is the federal government?
Great point, Amanda. This must be addressed in CTA as well. For instance, in the USA, if the US federal government is funding research according to the proper laws and regulations, the agreement between parties will also be under governmental action.
That's great to know about that, Sarah. Now let's talk about the ownership of data and the rights of publication. According to ICG guidelines, except source data and source documents, all clinical data and information resulted from the study is a sponsor property, and it is the academia obligation to repass it to the sponsor. The use of the data should account for health insurances and participants' agreement according to informed consent.
Great, Amanda. Important to address that sponsors often require confidentiality related to information provided by them, also regarding study terms. Study data is considered confidential information unless it is used for academic publication goals or to fulfill governmental or regulatory requisitions. Here, when working in an open research policy, it is possible to also give the right to academia to review when it's necessary the confidential information, as well as to review and supervise the study to guarantee the best care for the participants and to fulfill regulation conditions. Moreover, in the CTA, it is possible to assure approaches to avoid unauthorized disclosure and also the period to maintain confidentiality once the trial ends.
Very good, Sarah. Let's go further now to publication issue. The academia has the right to use study data and results accomplishing aims for research, education, better patient care, and to obey governmental and regulatory demands. Moreover, sponsors can be consulted prior article submission for publication in order to provide comments and reviews. The period to communicate sponsors before submission can also be addressed in CTA. As you mentioned, Sarah, considering an open science policy, it is important to prevent the sponsor from not wanting to publish their results and attempt to hide results considered as bad.
Very important point, Amanda. It is fundamental to address that is a sponsor obligation to follow trials registration recommendations, such as in clinical trials, in agreement with the International Committee of Medical Journals Editors to guarantee publication rights.
Indeed, Sarah. Furthermore, when trial is a multi-center, it is fundamental to establish how publication will be done, not only regarding authorship, but also related to time to disclose the results. Often, it is addressed in the CTA that results should be revealed in conjunction with other sites. Nevertheless, it can also be addressed in the CTA, a particular time when some of the academic side can publish their results in case the publication did not occur.
Exactly, Amanda. Another essential factor is the period to carry out the trial. It is important to remember that once the center is approved for feasibility, there is still a process to allow the center to start recruiting participants. This process also depends on the IRB and Ethics Committee approval time. Although there is a deadline for ethics committees to deliberate their positions, there may still occur a delay in this process. In addition, even if the initial submission of the trial is approved by Ethics Committee, when an amendment occurs, it may also be necessary to wait for its approval. Not to mention the time for all the materials related to the study to come to the site.
Yes, Sarah, there is a lot of bureaucracy. Therefore, even the recruitment of the first participant can often be time consuming. In addition, it is necessary to remember that even with good recruitment strategies, there may be a gap in the randomization of subjects. Also, the investigators in the sites usually are working in a lot of trials at the same time, and depending on the number of the research team, it is necessary to adjust time to put all participants in compliance with protocols. Sometimes this also can delay the recruitment start in a new trial, or can even reduce investigators' interest in recruiting quickly if the site is overloaded. That's why overload is one of the items that is evaluated in feasibilities.
Yeah, Amanda. Thus, in a view of all expected challenge, it is important that the sponsor establish a realistic deadline for the duration of the trial. Another point that deserves to be well detailed in the contract is payment issues. The payment is addressed in the CTA. Also, the budget is mentioned in the initial submission that requires ethical committee approbation. It is also possible to negotiate payment issues with the sponsor prior to signing a contract. Besides, changes in the budget due to protocol amendments need to be addressed in agreement and authorized by academia and sponsor parties.
Absolutely, Sarah. In line with research integrity, the aim for academic investigators is to comprise with the participants, the science, and the education while performing the trial. not to be involved in financial interest related to the study intervention market. In fact, sometimes the industry can try to overpay investigators in order to achieve its financial interests. And here it is when investigators' ethical ideals and integrity must overcome self and financial interests.
Wonderful, Amanda. As we can see, the CTA it is an important strategy to protect both academic medical centers and sponsors. Communication is fundamental, and indeed it plays an important role during CTA negotiation. By having a strong negotiation at the beginning of the process can prevent further disputes. Certainly, improvements in clinical trials can be achieved when sponsors, investigators, and clinical trial sites communicate effectively. For instance, the principal investigator must negotiate, discuss all aspects related to the study, whether written or verbal, especially when there is a provision that is questionable or not agreeable. Moreover, communication with a law entity is extremely relevant to properly negotiate the CTA terms and language. Likewise, a periodic review of the contract is desirable to keep it up to date.
That's a great conclusion, Sarah. Indeed, we need to be aware of business inside clinical trials. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening.